where the moon lights.
An excellent day for an exorcism.
I'm your number one fan.
Hey up and welcome back to Rate Scary, and this is a bonus episode. I feel like I have not done a bonus episode for a horror theatrical release in absolutely ages. I think the last one I did was The Monkey. Like, March was dry, man. March was hella dry, and I think the only real major release that we got is the film that I am going to talk about, which is The Woman in the Yard. Now, I'm going to admit I am so late with doing this bonus episode just because life has been busy recently, and also there has been a lot of discourse online about this film. Some positive, some negative, some very controversial opinions on this film. And I also kind of wanted to leave it a little bit just to allow people to go and see the film before actually digging into some of the details. And I don't think it's quite as well publicized as some of our other horror films have been this year, because when I posted my mini spoiler review on TikTok, I had people asking, where is this showing? Is this on Netflix? Is this on Prime? And I'm like, no, it's in cinemas right now. So hopefully a few more people will have been to see it by the time I am publishing this bonus cheeky episode. So as always, when I do these reviews, there are going to be major spoilers ahead. I'm going to be talking about spoiler plot details. I am going to be talking about the very controversial ending to this film. So if you have not watched The Woman in the Yard and you don't want it spoiled for yourself, please save this and come back to it later. The other thing that I'm going to say is, hopefully by now all people who don't want this spoiled have disappeared and left the episode. If not, this is your last chance, because something I'm going to say is going to give away a major plot point. I am going to be talking about some very heavy topics. So there is going to be discussion of mental health, specifically depression, and I am going to be talking about suicidal ideation. So if you do not feel strong enough to hear about those topics being talked about, please look after yourself, turn this episode off, save it for when you are feeling strong enough and you're willing to enter into that conversation. I am also going to put in the show notes for this episode some links to some charities that can help with these particular things. So if you are feeling by the end of this episode like you need to reach out to someone, please check the show notes either on YouTube or on your podcast player, and there will be some contact information there for you. Okay, so as always, what I'm going to do first is I am going to whiz through the story, give a brief overview so we've got an idea of all the characters, and then we will start to dig into some of the detail around it. The Woman in the Yard is about Ramona, who is a widowed single mother who was unfortunately disabled after a car accident that also killed her husband, David. She has been left to care for their two children, Taylor and Annie, but she is very strict, and she is also emotionally distant from them. We get the sense that she is not only grieving the loss of her husband, but that she is experiencing maybe feelings of survivor's guilt and also struggling to get around thanks to her disability. The day where we join Ramona, Taylor and Annie in their lovely family home, they're setting up for breakfast, getting ready to start the day. We learn that the electricity's out in the house, they've run out of dog food. No electricity means that they can't charge their phones and very basic things like that. So they are essentially a little bit cut off from the world, but they say, you know what, it's fine, everything will be sorted tomorrow. What we then see is a mysterious woman draped in black appearing in the front yard, claiming that today is the day. Ramona goes outside to confront the woman and try and find out who exactly she is, but doesn't really come back with any answers and hurries back inside. Meanwhile, the woman uses some sort of magic shadows to attack their dog, Charlie, who then goes missing and unfortunately is presumed dead for the rest of the film. Now, Ramona is very suspicious of this woman and she tries to keep the kids away from her, because also the woman seems to know the true circumstances around her husband David's death. And we find out that Ramona has made the kids think that it was David who was driving the car, caused the accident, and then ultimately lost his life. but it was actually Ramona who was driving and crashed the car after they had an argument while out for a meal. And they were talking about how unhappy Ramona is with her life, their marriage, and their family. Seemingly, the woman is using some sort of dark power to antagonize this family and attempt to take Ramona's children away. It is at this point that Ramona decides to surrender herself to the woman and agrees to send the children away for safety and accept her fate. The woman is revealed to be a physical manifestation of Ramona's psyche and her mental health state, and she's only appeared because Ramona was praying for her. Now, when pressed, Ramona claims that she prayed for the strength to carry on after David's death. But in reality, what she was praying for was the strength to end her life because of her depression. And the woman has turned up to help her with doing that. The woman then shows Ramona various different photo frames of the children as young kids, but then shows them growing up and being extremely successful later on in life, convincing Ramona that the children are going to be better off without her. Ramona then says goodbye to her children, and the woman leads her to a farm outhouse with a rifle and assists Ramona in pointing it at her face. But before Ramona pulls the trigger with the assistance of the woman, her children return along with the dog Charlie, who we thought was dead, and then the woman disappears. The children ask Ramona, will the woman come back? And Ramona assures them that if she does, she will be ready. As they embrace and they return to the house, the camera pans into the house and reveals a painting that Ramona had not yet finished, but it shows her and the woman's faces merged together with Ramona's name spelled backwards. So a very basic story, in essence, a very simple plot. I would say it's pretty simple to follow along with. It's not as complex as some of the other films that I've covered on this podcast, where it's felt like I've been talking for ages about what the actual plot lines are of the film. And it is a one-location film with a very limited cast. So essentially, we only have 5 characters in this film, and it is all set at Ramona and her family's home. In terms of the cast, I think we've got a fantastic cast in this. I really, really appreciated the acting. So first of all, we've got Danielle Deadwyler as Ramona, the mother. And this is the first thing that I've seen her in, actually. She was completely new to me. I am aware that she was in Carry On from last year, which was Netflix's huge hit at Christmas. She has been in I Saw the TV Glow, which is still on my watch list, and I really need to watch that. And she is also in an upcoming film called 40 Acres, which I am very, very interested in seeing. I am trying to get hold of a screener for this damn film. And hopefully I can get one a bit closer to when it's releasing. But I thought she did a wonderful job of portraying a woman that is clearly feeling the burden of family life, feeling the emotional turmoil that motherhood takes on a woman, as well as grieving the loss of her husband, trying to come to terms with this disability that she now has and having to rely on only herself and her 2 young children to support her in getting around and getting her out of bed every day as well. Like we see at the beginning of this film, she is playing a video of her husband over and over again because she's mourning him. She's mourning the life that they had, like even the house that they live in. David had bought it for them as a family to be able to grow into and to renovate and become their family home. And now that driving force is no longer in her life, she's probably feeling exceptionally overwhelmed with things. And I know, like, even this evening, I'm at home alone because my husband is away with work for the next 2 nights. And even just small burdens, you realize, like down to, we've got 3 cats. I know that when he's away, I need to feed them. I need to clean out their litter trays. Like they're going to be coming and waking me up in the morning. They're going to be coming and jumping on the bed when I go to sleep at night. And actually, when you go from there being 2 of you to just 1 of you, you realize how much teamwork is involved in simply running a house. And I know that's a really small example. I obviously don't have children, I have fur babies. But still, it's noticeable when my husband is away, I feel then that burden of picking up all of the family work, the housework, and looking after the cats while he's away. So I can completely, to an extent, understand how Ramona is feeling going from being in this secure relationship, working as a team, as parents, to now not only being on her own, but being on her own and being disabled and being depressed. The other thing that I think Danielle Deadwyler did fantastically is ensuring that her character wasn't likable. Like, we don't feel any sort of warmth for Ramona. We almost sort of resent her because of the way that she speaks to the children, because she's snapping back at them, she's telling them off. She's clearly very frustrated with life. And obviously, we find out later in the flashback to the dinner that she had with her and her husband on the fateful night that their car crashed. She wasn't happy in their family dynamic. She wasn't happy that they'd moved to the countryside. She wasn't happy when they lived in the city before. Maybe she never even wanted children. And again, like, I'm saying that as someone who doesn't have children, has made an active choice not to have children. I could relate to her in those moments of, if I had ended up having children, I would be mourning the loss of my old life, of having that independence, being able to do what I want rather than these responsibilities, otherwise known as children. So she's relatable, but she's also not got that warmth. I think some people feel like that's a little bit of a miss. I think they wanted her to become this almost perfect victim by feeling sorry for her and wishing that she wouldn't do what she ultimately ends up doing. But that's not life, unfortunately. And we'll come on to talk about the ins and outs of Ramona's suicidal ideation in a little bit. We then have the two children. So we've got Peyton Jackson as Taylor, who is Ramona's son, and we've got Estella Kahia as Annie, who is Ramona's daughter. Two very young actors, especially Estella as Annie, who I thought was brilliant for her age. I thought she was great, like quite limited lines, quite limited in terms of screen time. I thought Peyton Jackson as Taylor was fantastic. Like, you really get the impression that him and Ramona, Danielle Deadwyler, have got this dynamic of almost a resentment for each other. I get the sense of he resents her being the one that survived, potentially, in the accident that they had. He resents the fact that he's the eldest child in the family, so he's now almost, well, he is having to care for Ramona as she can't get around the house, as she can't carry out the responsibilities that she's supposed to. And you really feel that uncomfortable tension between the two of them. We have Russell Hornsby as David. Again, very small screen time that we have with him, but very believable in terms of his relationship with Danielle as Ramona. The other person that I was exceptionally impressed with is Okui Okpokwasili, who plays the woman in the yard. She is, how do I describe it? I think I'm slightly in love with this woman. Oh my God, why can I not get the words out for her? I just think she looks visually striking and stunning, and she has such screen presence and demands your attention when she's on the screen. There, I've managed to get my words out. Clearly, I am in love with this woman. She's just got such a fascinating face, and the other thing is her voice. Like, I want to listen to her reading an audiobook. I want to listen to her on a podcast. Okui, if you're listening, please feel free to come and chat shit on this podcast, and I will just stare at you starry-eyed, with more like heart eyes, really. But I think she was phenomenal. I'd seen her before in Exorcist Believer. She plays the doctor. I thought she was great in that. I'm not a fan of the film overall, but I thought she was really, really good in it. And I thought she was incredible in this. Like, she's just got this perfect balance of being beautiful, but being haunting. She looks, in terms of height, she looks huge, like with this veil draped over her. She's just got such a presence in the yard. She is a blotch on this beautiful landscape, but in the most lovely way. And the latter scenes with her and Ramona together had me really emotional, and I think that is mainly down to Okwi's performance, as well as Danielle Deadweiler. But yeah, I cannot wait to see her in more stuff. So I'm probably going to talk about next two things which are going to intertwine with each other. The first one being the themes of the film, and the second one being the ending. So if we start off with the ending, there has been a lot of discourse online, firstly around, did Ramona actually follow through with ending her life or not? And that is because the ending is exceptionally ambiguous. So, like I talked about when I was running through the story, we see Ramona and we see the woman assisting Ramona, and she has the gun under her chin and she's ready to pull the trigger. But then miraculously, her children appear. The dog who we thought was dead appears, and we see them going from the farm outhouse into the house. Suddenly, the landscape looks nicer. The farm has a lovely painted sign which has got a name, and we'd seen flashbacks earlier in the film of Ramona and David in bed talking about what they were going to name the farm, and magically the farm now has a name. And then the other thing that made the ending really ambiguous is the fact that as we pan inside, we see a painting that Ramona has been working on, and it combines Ramona and the woman. And Ramona has signed her name with a backwards R. Now, throughout the film, we see mirror images basically, and it all starts with when Ramona's daughter is practicing her handwriting and she keeps messing up the letter R. She keeps messing up spelling in general, but specifically the letter R she keeps putting backwards, and it really, really bothers Ramona to the point of absolute anger and frustration. And in a real moment of Ramona being wound up by Annie spelling these words incorrectly, by spelling R incorrectly, Taylor is banging a ball against the wall and he's pissed at Ramona. He's being quite venomous. Ramona picks up Annie, and what we see initially is Ramona stabbing Annie in the back with a huge kitchen knife. But then we very quickly realize that Ramona is looking in a mirror, and that is not actually what's happening. It's what she is imagining, what she is maybe dreaming of, what she is hoping for in that moment. So we have a mirror image there. A little bit later on as well, when we have almost a bit of a chase scene between Ramona and the woman and the two children through the house, Ramona enters a flashback scene with her husband, and we can see that everything in the room is backwards, like writing is backwards. This is clearly a form of Ramona's imagination, a projection of what she's thinking about, what she's feeling. But again, it is a mirror image. So to then end the film with very clearly having a painting that has Ramona's R, the R from her name, backwards, it's going to mean one of two things. Either Ramona hasn't carried out her act of suicide and she is using the letter R spelled backwards as a reminder of this time, a signifier of strength in a time of weakness, something along those lines, kind of to represent those feelings that she had in that moment. Or Ramona has carried out and ended her life, and that end scene is a projection of Ramona's thoughts. Her family's happy, Ramona is happy, her life has ended, she got what she wanted, and that backwards R shows us that is that projection, that mirror image that we saw earlier in the film. And it is exactly this that has caused a lot of the conversation, a lot of the anger, the disgust that I've seen with some of my fellow film reviewers, critics. And this is kind of what I wanted to talk about, because I have very mixed feelings about the film as a whole. Majority positive. I enjoyed this film. And You know, that takes a lot because this is a Blumhouse film. I wouldn't say I went in with low expectations because I felt like the trailers looked good, and Blumhouse do have some good films, but they do also churn out a lot of shite. And I'm grateful that this wasn't one of them, but a lot of people don't feel the same way as me. So, first and foremost, this is a story about depression. And in my opinion, grief is overdone as a metaphor, especially when it comes to Blumhouse films. Like, I think we have literally done it to death now. But where this film sets itself apart from others is the use of survivor's guilt as a driving force for mental health and also for suicidal ideation. And if we think about Ramona's journey through this film, I think this film is a great representation of not being in control of, or even sometimes being aware of your demons. And Ramona wasn't aware of her demon until she started to think back on the accident. And it's that triggered the woman in the yard, her demon, to appear. Now, at first, Ramona wanted to ignore it, like a lot of people do. The woman in the yard sat far off in the field, not close enough to affect how Ramona felt deep inside, but as the film goes on, her children very clearly begin to test her sanity. We've got Taylor lashing out at her, we've got Annie bringing up her father, and each inconvenience, it caused the woman to creep closer and closer to the house, observing Ramona's slow descent into depression. Now, her children don't really think anything of it because they don't understand how depression works. Like I said, they are young children. They think Ramona is just upset every time that she snaps at them. We also see at one point Taylor, the son, tries to fight Ramona's depression for her. He goes outside with a shotgun to try and intimidate the woman in the yard. But he doesn't have the strength to shoot it because Ramona's thoughts are much deeper and much more complex than Taylor can handle. And when Ramona reveals to Taylor what happened with the car crash, the fact that she was the cause of the accident, it shows how her depression has been there with her the whole time. She can no longer feel what she'd felt many years ago, explaining this to her husband. And the woman in the yard finally reaches the house. She attacks the kids in the process, and she completely takes over Ramona's mind. And this is why you get those glimpses of Ramona killing her daughter and lashing out in the attic. She has not only become a danger to herself, but also to her family. And this is where it got really strange and really ambiguous. And this is where I fall out with the film a little bit. We've got different points of view with Ramona as herself and also as the woman in the yard. But we understand at this point they are the same person all along, but she is fighting to figure out which one she wants to be. Is she the one who loved life, loved her children, or is she the one that wants to end it all? Now, a lot of the anger that I've heard about the film is that the film presents the act of suicide as an act of liberation from sadness and the right thing for Ramona to do for her family. But I think it's really important to remember here, again, that the woman in the yard is Ramona. They are her thoughts. She believes that her children will be better off without her and that this act is her only choice. So when we see the woman in the yard showing Ramona these changing picture frames of look how happy your family is going to be if you disappear, that isn't the woman showing her. That is Ramona telling herself, my children are going to be better off if I am not here. Now, I deal with suicidal people every single week at work, sometimes numerous times a week. I myself have had suicidal thoughts and ideation a number of times throughout my life. And this film is a brutal, uncomfortable representation of suicidal ideation. That is a fact. Like, it might not be for everyone, but certainly for my experience, for the people that I encounter, for my own personal experience, that is fact. So this representation of the woman showing her, your family are going to be better off without you, doesn't sit uncomfortably with me. In fact, it resonates, and I find it refreshing for a film to represent and confront those feelings. But like I said, where I did struggle and where I initially rated the film a 4 out of 5 on leaving the cinema, I've now since knocked it down, I think, another half star. I hate the fact that we as the audience are left to wonder whether or not Ramona took her life, and I think it's wrong. I think the film should have either very clearly articulated that Ramona did take her own life, and it shows that her family were not better off without her, or it should have very, very clearly articulated that she did not take her own life. And I think they could have done that dead simply. Don't have the dog come back because we've all assumed it's dead at this point and it seems like magic it's returned. Don't give the farm a name because you've hinted at that in Ramona's conversation with her husband. And again, that seems like a projection. And don't spell Ramona's name backwards with an R. It's those three things that make us think we are in this mirror image world, Ramona's projection of what life could be like, that made the ending ambiguous. And that, I think, is what makes it feel like Ramona was right to do what she did. And, like, to put it bluntly, suicide in this film is not portrayed as negatively as it should be due to that. I don't think the film needs to be life affirming. I don't think it needs to cheer on how wonderful love and family is, or it needs to have a neat, happy ending. I don't believe any of those things. But I think you need to commit to an ending rather than, when it comes to this subject matter, allowing it to be ambiguous. Because if you've got someone watching this film who isn't of healthy mind, it could be dangerous. Now, to someone who has got a healthy mind, has never considered suicide, it could be a really great window into what mental health and what suicidal ideation really feels like. But I think if you struggle with these issues, it could be really harmful. And I don't think that's unfair to say. But like I said, as someone who has dealt with these thoughts for years, seeing a film portray those feelings and those fears and that guilt is what made the film resonate with me so well. I think it's beautifully made. I think it's visually striking, and so, like, the cinematography in this film is beautiful. And, you know, if you're going to take anything away from the film, I'd say take the acting and the cinematography away. But I just think it's a really great overall representation of what it's like to battle with those feelings. If only they hadn't have given us that dodgy ending. And I think that's probably a learning for the writer Sam Stefanak. This was their first feature film writing debut, previously known for writing for various different TV series. A big film to take on. It's adapted from a book, I think it's called The Man in the Yard, so same themes. So it's been adapted as a screenplay. So I don't know if the ending is as ambiguous in the book as it is in the film, or if it's been created that way for the film specifically. I'd be curious to know, actually. So if anyone has read the book, please let me know. And Sam was paired with Jean-Colette Serra as director, who I think is a fantastic director. Previously done a number of horror films: House of Wax from 2005, Orphan from 2009, The Shallows from 2016, which is phenomenal. I absolutely love. More recently, done some iffier films. Seems to like working with Dwayne Johnson, so did both Jungle Cruise and Black Adam. But very, very recently did the 2024 film Carry On, which featured on Netflix. Apparently the second most views ever on Netflix, which is just insane. And I'm not one of them. I've still not watched it. But I thought he did a wonderful job in terms of direction. Like I said, I think it's a beautiful film. I think it's blocked. I think it's edited wonderfully. And I look forward to seeing what Jean-Colette Serra does next, hopefully after Black Adam and Jungle Cruise. With Carry On and The Woman in the Yard in his back pocket now, he's on the rise again. So we'll see what he does next. So in summary, I did really enjoy this film. Like I said, initially, fresh out the cinema, I gave it 4 out of 5. I have since knocked that down to a 3.5, just based on reflection on that unusual ending, unfortunate ending. And I think it is one that I would actually watch again. I think it had some interesting scares in there. almost at times it felt like I was going to get the same sort of scares that I get with The Woman in Black, where you catch a glimpse of the woman and it gives you chills. I really wish that they had done more in terms of that, because those moments were really, really powerful. And instead, again, they leant back on kind of this emotional fear, this representation of grief, rather than just delivering some really great ghostly scares. It certainly wasn't what I was expecting going into the film, which I always appreciate. I feel like I knew from the trailers, I think I talked about this on a previous episode, I knew from the trailers it was going to be a representation of grief. I didn't realize how far the film was going to go, which I appreciated the fact that they held back some of that from the trailer, so I'd take that as a positive. Do I think this is a rate scary film? I think it completely depends on your mindset. So to me, yes, it is a rate scary film because it is such an accurate depiction of suicidal ideation and depression. To other people who have not, very luckily, experienced those things, no, probably not. And I think that's where they could have delivered a bit better on some of the scares. But I still think even without those scares, it's a really great film. I definitely would watch it again to try and pick up on maybe some of the stuff that I didn't the first time around. But I would like to add it to my physical collection as well. So do let me know in the comments what you think. Were you a fan of the film? What did you think of the ending? Do you think Ramona actually went through with it? Do you think the ending was distasteful, like some of my peers have stated? Or do you agree that maybe this was an accurate depiction of those feelings? Do let me know in the comments, or feel free to drop me a line on my social media. You can follow me at Rate Scary on YouTube and Instagram, or at Scary Zara Mary on TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and Letterboxd. So like I said at the top of the episode, there are links, some useful contacts, some charities that if you feel like you need them after having listened to this, or at any time in general, please do go and reach out to them and access those resources. In terms of future episodes, I am probably going to release another bonus episode later this week, just to try and play catch up a little bit. In fact, I've got 2 bonus episodes I need to record because I went to the cinema twice last week. I went to see Death of a Unicorn and I went to see Screamboat, and I have a lot to say about both of them. One positive, one negative. I'll let you try and figure out between now and when I release them as to which one is which, unless you follow me on Letterboxd, in which case you'll have figured it out. But I will also be releasing on YouTube my weekly horror news. That's every Wednesday. So you're going to get a lot of content this week, especially if you are over on YouTube. So I kind of apologize in advance for that. But in terms of other episodes, on a Monday, as usual, we are going through torture porn at the moment. So you will get another torture porn episode next Monday, and I cannot wait for that. I've got a couple more great guests lined up to come and talk to me about some torture films, so please do tune into those. But until then, I'll see you with this then. I'll see you soon.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
I'll be right back.
Game over. It's all for you.
Beware the moonlights.
An excellent day for an exorcism.
I'm your number 1 fan.